Hey everyone, welcome to Beginnings, the show that asks, where do creative people come from? My name is Andy. I am the host of the show and a writer and performer based in Los Angeles, California. And welcome to today's bonus episode. About 9 years ago, a little over, at the end of January 2010, we debuted our first episode of Beginnings. Now, I say we because I used to do this show with my former writing partner, Mark. And the show started because we had just moved to New York because we wanted to, quote-unquote, do comedy as a career, whatever that meant. And, you know, this was the very early days of podcasting. We thought, well, why don't we start a show where we interview people to try to figure out, how do you have a career in this? You know, we interviewed people who were farther along than us. And the 400th episode is coming up, I think probably next week. So I thought, why not look back a little bit? And I talk about this mostly in the episode, so I'll keep this brief. But on the first episode, I talked to a friend of mine who I had met through UCB, who's also doing sketch and improv, Aaron Burdette. He's on the first episode along with our other friend, Corey. And Aaron is still doing this. He is a writer out here in Los Angeles. He has written for a number of shows, including Man Seeking Woman on FX. And he had just sold a show last year to ABC. And Naomi and I just sold a show. I mentioned it in this episode that it hasn't been announced yet, but as of Monday, it's been announced. We sold a show to Comedy Central about the early days of our relationship. And the process we went through is called development. And whenever I talk to my parents about this, you kind of just see them silently wishing that they just had grandchildren and they didn't have to understand what these things are, because it's a very weird process to get a television show made. It's not very linear. In the process of actually figuring out what a television show is called development. And I thought, okay, we're looking back towards the beginning of this show. Aaron and I are both here in Los Angeles. We're both kind of at the same place in our careers. We both sold shows recently and went through this process. Why don't we talk together about what development really is? I think maybe if you are interested in television writing, if you are interested in the business of entertainment, and you are like I was 9 years ago, and how does this actually work? You might find this interesting. Aaron and I are also old friends, so it's fun to talk to him. On mic or off. I mean, the landscape's a little different now. There's probably 1,000 podcasts about television writing. I know there's a wonderful one called Children of Tendu, which is hosted by Javi Grillo Markswatch and Jose Molina, who are two veteran TV writers. In fact, Javi was on an episode of Beginnings. I think he was one of the first people I wrote when we moved out here because I loved his series, The Middleman, and he's also written on Lost. So check out their podcast. But I think it's interesting to hear, as Aaron and I are kind of first-timers doing this, kind of what our experiences were. So I hope you enjoy this episode. And then next week, probably episode 400, which should be a special interview. Anyway, thanks so much for listening through the years. Thanks so much for subscribing and writing reviews and all that other kind of stuff. Writing me emails and saying nice things. Okay, I don't want to belabor this intro anymore. Stay tuned for some great episodes coming up, including I just talked with Solomon Giorgio, who not only is a great stand-up, wonderful TV writer, is also an awesome person. So that'll be coming up in the next couple weeks. But for now, let's talk to Aaron about development. You were on the very first episode of Beginnings.
Are we going?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
Unless you want to talk about the movie Glass some more, which you have yet to see.
I haven't and won't.
And all you have to go on is my review of it, which was we watched the movie in the wake of our dog leaving, our foster dog leaving. So we were not in the best emotional space. So I'm dragging it. But also, I think if I had seen it, just like everything was right in the world, like Trump just ate a bullet, like he killed himself. Mm-hmm. Just so we're clear, I do not advocate
eating bullets.
I advocate for the Megadeth song "Eating Bullets,"
I haven't heard
which is the sequel to "Sweating Bullets." But
wow, Megadeth's doing sequels.
I'm saying that Trump says, "You know what? Heaven needs me," and then he puts a gun in his mouth.
There's an emergency in heaven.
Heaven needs I don't even do a Trump impression, but heaven needs a new Trump Tower.
I think that's maybe the best way we can get rid of him. Is tell him, hey, God called. There's an emergency that only you can solve in heaven, and you got to get there now.
You got to build. He needs a new casino.
Can I do a Trump impression?
Hello, I'm Donald Trump.
I can do his hands. That's about it.
I can do his hands. I'm doing his hands now, podcast listeners. Check me out. Whatever.
I'll take a picture of it and put it on the website.
Don't.
Fair enough. So yes, we are doing this. So you were on the first episode. So episode 400 is coming up, and I'm like, how can we look backwards? I don't know how much longer I'm gonna have the time to do this.
Right.
Would love to get to episode 500.
Okay.
Seems like a good number to get to. But
is that just where you want to stop? Your goal is to stop at 500?
I don't know if I have a goal. It's just that it's getting increasingly difficult to keep up a podcast that I have not, to keep up a thing that I haven't monetized.
Right. But also it's funny that the thing that would cause it to maybe stop is the fact that you are not beginning anymore.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about, because this is what I was thinking about, which is that like you and I, so on the first episode, I mean, I used to host this with my former writing partner, and you were on it, and then our other friend Corey was on it.
Yeah.
I think you and I are the only ones that have stayed with this. Corey works at Sam B. I think he's in the graphic design area. Mm-hmm. And Mark has totally left comedy, and I think he's an editor at the Dodo.
Wow.
Which is very cool.
I mean, yeah, that's a great website.
But also, I think you and I are the only ones that have we moved to LA. Mm-hmm. So 9 years ago, we recorded an episode around this time.
Yeah, and I will not listen to it. I can't. I thought about it because I remember doing it, and I was like, if we're gonna kind of think about like where we started or anything like that, I was like, should I listen to it? I know I can't. I remember being like such a douche. I feel maybe not on the podcast, but just like such lofty opinions about like what comedy is and should be, like how to do it, like how I was going to do it, like all these things that just like however old I was at that point, 24, 25, like just an idiot, just a dumb baby.
I remember some of your lofty ones were like, if it's not Frasier or Family Guy, it's not comedy.
Yeah, I think those, I mean, that I stand by, of course. So that hasn't changed, but there are only two comedies, in my opinion.
Frasier and Family Guy.
They got to start with F.
Yeah.
F is for family is a close third.
Close third, but still doesn't, it's more of a dramedy.
Yes, that's right.
So it doesn't exactly. But I won't listen to it either. It's also like probably, we had like a single microphone in the middle of 4 improv people. So
yeah. I remember doing it. We were in what, Brooklyn or Greenpoint or somewhere?
Greenpoint, yeah, in our apartment in Greenpoint.
Yeah.
But I thought, so you and I are living in LA now. I guess we're doing this. I guess I could say I'm doing this professionally at this point.
Yeah, which is, it's weird to say because we are. I mean, like it is my entire job and it's your entire job. It's the only way that I make money anymore, but that's still relatively new, or at least feels like it is. It
is. I had my first professional writing job in 2013, but then I remember I talked to Beth Stelling, who's a stand-up on this show, maybe about 4 years ago, and she was saying you will quit your day job about 5 times.
Yeah.
And I thought that was like the beginning of everything. And then it wasn't. And so I would get work, and then I would not get work and go in between temp jobs for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But I thought one of the things that my parents have a lot of problems with understanding this industry is development.
Yeah.
And you and I have been through different development stuff. We both have sold shows recently.
Yes.
I can't. They're announcing it soon, but I can't really say much about it except for the process.
Okay.
I can't say specifics.
I can maybe say specifics on mine because the good news is mine was officially passed on yesterday.
Oh, shit. So sorry.
Let's cry about it. No.
Oh, God. I'm sorry.
I don't feel I'm saying that just because it's on my mind, but also because I don't feel that bad about it. And I think that ties in directly to the career nature of this conversation is that I've had enough rejection at this point that having having the thought that this is basically the first like major thing I ever sold, and having the thought that it would immediately get made is crazy. That's not how it happens.
Yeah.
And I'm used to that, and I'm kind of used to the like, yeah, you do something and then you keep even anything new. I've been doing comedy for like a long time, 10 years, 12, something, some insane period of time that feels like forever. That is nowhere near as long as a lot of people have been doing it. But I'm still like, this is a new thing, and every time I start a new thing, I know it's going to take a while to like master it or, you know, get really good at it or whatever the process is. So I don't feel that sad. Like I wanted it to happen, but
it wasn't your baby.
It is a little. And it's not 100% dead. It's a show that we sold to ABC, and we were developing with ABC. And I feel really proud of what we did. And now the option is to take it somewhere else. And I feel good enough about it that I think I maybe can.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like it's 100% dead in the water.
It sounded cool. Do you want to go through the process of, because, so development, when my parents are like, what are you doing? And I have to say, we're developing something. Mm-hmm. And the only thing that they can ask them, are you getting paid for it? And then sometimes I have to say yes. And sometimes I have to say no.
Right.
Because it's very, the process itself, I don't know if it's intentionally murky, but like there's a lot of different pathways it can take under the one umbrella of development.
Yeah.
And whatever that means. And I thought it might be useful for listeners who are starting out, or, you know, again, it's part of the mission of the show back in the day was, how the fuck do you have a job in this stuff?
Right.
Because it was so opaque, you know, just moving to New York and being like, I'm going to be in entertainment, I'm going to do comedy, whatever that fucking meant.
And it meant something totally different back then anyway.
Yeah.
Like that was like, oh, I want to write for the network television show. Like I either want to write a movie or a TV show and get staffed on it and write for it for 8 years, like Seinfeld or whatever. Even when we were starting, I feel like that was still kind of the model because Netflix didn't have its own content yet. Like there was not all these streaming services. It was very much just like, I want to write for a TV show that will be on TV. Full stop.
I want it to be Bob and David. I wanted Mark and I mean,
yeah.
If you go back and look at wrestling team stuff now, it's fucking nonsense. It is. There's like a good idea at the core of every one of the things we made, but it is so covered up. We couldn't just like be confident in the jokes, so they had to be covered up by layers and layers of nonsense. It's just like it's like a 7 bean dip where 7 layers are nonsense, and then the good idea is the pan that it's in.
Yeah.
But I wanted that. And then I'm like, eventually it's weird how like eventually you figure out, I'm like, oh, I'm fine as a performer. I'm probably like, I would say at this point, if I did improv or wrote sketch or something like that, I would be good at it. But like, no one needs me. No one needs like another white dude doing
No one
sketch.
really needs anybody is the other thing.
Well, yeah.
So,
but I'm not vital. Like there are performers I will watch and I'm like, yeah, people, your voice is necessary.
Yeah, that's true. Like you do see people who you're just like, oh, I haven't seen you before.
Yeah. I mean, my writing voice I think my writing voice is unique, but I think my performing voice is fine.
Yeah. I feel the same.
Yeah, I think the same for you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a reason that like I think you and I, you know, have stayed friends and like kind of circled each other creatively the whole time because I think we have similar but different ways of doing this stuff, and I know your stuff makes me laugh a lot, and
yeah, ditto. And I think it's like we both, and this is kind of touching on the me calling myself a douchebag, but like the thing that I think we both did over time was, and I think something that we brought to it when we first started out was this kind of sense that we wanted to be different and wanted to do something. Like I had this like, I want to do something nobody's ever seen before. Like if I've ever heard this joke before, I am not doing anything close to it at all. I'll be as weird as I can be just to make sure that this is fresh. Uh-huh. And then over time you start to realize like, really people want it to be funny. And if you can just make it funny, it doesn't have to be like, what will make it fresh and original is your own sense of humor and approach. Like you can write the same old, like somebody moves back in with their parents sitcom that everyone has written and it can still be good. You can still make a good version of that. If you bring like your own history to it or, you know, whatever, like, but that's just something that takes forever to build.
Yeah. Cause you are, at least me a decade ago or more, so obsessed with being a unique voice. Mm-hmm. And because that was the obsession, it wasn't unique. It was just nonsense.
It might have been unique, but it's also borderline impenetrable.
Yes. Yeah, like, I think that's true.
And I'm saying that for me too. I'm not accusing you of being impenetrable.
No, I think it was. Cause like I had like a weirder script, but like very comprehensible, but still like strange. Like it was a sci-fi comedy. And then my agent was like, can you write something just like kind of down to earth, just so like we can try to get you staffed? And I wrote like one of those things, like it was about me getting kicked out of grad school. Mm-hmm. And I had gotten kicked out of grad school and, or the character got kicked out of grad school and then went to work with his sister at an off-track betting place, which is, I worked one summer. And it's the fucking most depressing. I've had terrible jobs. Right. And that was the most depressing job I've ever had.
I can't possibly picture a nice one.
It is, I don't want to even go into it because there's not like one ray of sunshine. There's not like, well, you know what, but it was serving the community in a certain way. No, it was just like top to bottom vile.
Yeah.
But even that, like writing something down to earth at this point, my voice was able to come through the jokes, and you can write a joke that's comprehensible and still yours.
Yeah. And it's still a real world scenario. Like I do the same thing. Everything I instinctually write is like surreal or a little strange or like has like kind of big visual jokes that probably would never happen in real life. And I also was asked by my manager to write something a little more down to earth the same way. And I wrote exactly what I just described, a script about somebody like who basically fails at their artistic endeavors in New York and has to move back to the South, to Mississippi, which is where I'm from. And so it's just all jokes about Mississippi, really, viewed from the lens of somebody who doesn't want to be there. Everyone, I think, in the world has written a script about somebody moving back in with their parents, but I feel good enough about the specificity of the South that I gave it. Yeah. That it's like, that's what you should read here. I'm not trying to reinvent the wheel, but like, look, when it comes to specificity, I can be good at it. It's kind of like all you're doing. And so it's weird enough in that sense. It doesn't have to be on the moon.
And I bet, I'll bet, I was going to say dollars to donuts. And then my brain was like, good cliche, Andy. No, how about you come up with an original saying?
Let's pitch that show. Dollars to donuts.
It's a good game show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can convert your dollars into donuts.
So you bring in dollars. And you pay or convert. Donuts. Yeah. Or convert the cash into donuts, which you then eat or share with other people.
It's a very good game show.
So I will bet that is... your version of that is a unique version of that. Like, also, I haven't seen anyone moving home into the South specifically. Like, I haven't seen that iteration of it.
Tig Notaro. I guess it's different.
I'm like, oh, well, all right.
Yeah. I guess I was can't. Just like, I'm going to call myself out. No. I mean, hers is very specific, and it's a true story. But Yeah, I mean, like I think that's what I was hoping for, was at least like if there are shows about people moving back to the South, hopefully they aren't like this. That's the best I can do, and I don't know. So I think that's just part of it, is just trying to be you in whatever small way you can.
Yeah. So I wanted to talk about the development process exactly, the one you went through, because they're all you. There's two. I made some notes before we started recording, and there's two ways what development means, and maybe you can talk about that a little bit. But there's two ways to go about it. Basically, it's paid or unpaid.
Yeah.
And development just means
I've done both.
Yeah.
Yeah, development really, I didn't even, when I first started doing it, didn't fully know what it meant, because people would be like, oh yeah, you're now like, we're developing this show. And I'm like, are we developing it? It feels like I'm writing a bunch of stuff for free and then we're going to roll the dice. That's what my initial introduction to development was.
I tweeted out a joke that said TV development combines the work of writing for TV with the salary of watching TV.
That is exactly right. So yeah, the first way, and I think the way that a lot of people end up doing, it's probably the more common way, is you have an idea, and you find some sort of partner, be it a producer, a production company. In the network world, they call them pods, I guess. I don't necessarily know what that is. I think I'm going to act as if I do, and say that a pod is a production company that is specifically contracted with a specific network. So like, I think, what's the guy from Big Bang Theory? Jim Parsons. I think he has a production company, but his production company has some sort of like exclusive deal with CBS. So that's a pod, because that production company can't take anything anywhere else. They're basically...
So they have to. Oh, yeah. Naomi worked with... I don't know what names I can say, but Naomi worked with some people on Great News who had a development deal, I think, with NBC. And they were specifically creating television shows for NBC.
Yeah. That's one way. I mean, the development deal is like what you want, because that's how you get paid to just kind of be developing all the time.
Yeah. I guess that's the third way. And then, but they can also, apparently, if you have a development deal, they can just put you on writing staffs and you don't get paid. You get paid from the deal.
Yeah.
You get a certain amount of money.
Right.
Whatever it is.
It's basically like, we want you here.
Yeah.
And so we'll give you work where we can to like keep you active and make sure that you're like doing something for us so that we get our money's worth out of it, basically.
Yeah.
The unpaid way is usually you take it to a production company. For me, I did it twice. Well, I guess they're slightly different. I don't know how much. I don't want to act like I'm an expert on this. I've basically done this like 4 times. And so I guess that's enough to kind of understand it, but I'm not going to act like I'm some genius about it. But the first one I did was a show that I came up with in a general meeting with a production company in New York. And since we came up with the idea together, kind of just like, I was like half pitching an idea I already had, and then they liked parts of it, and we like kind of bounced it around, and then we were like, this sounds like a good show, let's pitch it. So then I wrote a Bible, basically outlining everything that, like all the characters, the setup, why we want to make the show, why it's relevant now, and then a bunch of episode ideas and like season arcs, rough season arcs for like 3 seasons. Well, the first season arc was very detailed, but then like 2 and 3 were like paragraphs. So just coming up with as much as I could to be like, I know what this show is. And then all of that was unpaid, because it's basically, I'm just doing it on spec to say, I would like to work with this production company. You want to work with me. Let's see if someone will pay us to create this show together. So then we went and pitched that one, and we pitched it to, I guess, 9 or 10 networks, and then nobody bought it. So that was that. The other one that I did was that I was kind of doing at the same time was a pilot I had already written that I wrote on spec just to have as a sample. A production company read and they were actually kind of half production company, half studio, which I don't even, I can't get into the weeds on that. It's like a studio basically can pay people and a production company usually can't, is kind of the long and the short of it.
Yeah, that's what we did with, so the thing we just sold, Naomi years ago went into a general meeting at CBS Studios. They loved her so much that they gave her what's called a blind deal.
Okay.
And they paid her like a small amount of money to give them an idea that they would then, everyone would go pitch.
Okay.
She gave them an idea. They didn't like it. And then they kind of put it on hold for a long time. And then eventually we had this idea. And she's like, well, Andy and I have this idea. Would you be interested in that? And they're like, yes. And so they added me to that deal.
Okay.
And that's how that thing happened. But they paid us a small amount of money until we sold it.
And that's like completely different than what happened to me either time. And also different from what happened to me the third time. So there is absolutely a million ways that it can happen. And it's always just like, how can we get an idea, basically? Everyone just wants an idea out of you and to hopefully turn it into something, see where it goes. It's a lot of like gambling.
Yeah. A production company or a studio, whoever is like your partner in this, they're basically lending you their legitimacy a little bit.
Yeah.
Because then you can say, oh, well, I'm making this, or I'm developing this idea with X, Y, or Z, who either, production companies are owned by actors who have way too much money and don't know what to do with it. And they're, I guess, reinvesting it in some way. I really don't know.
There's so many. It's like the one that I worked with in New York was, I guess I'm just going to avoid using names just in case. I don't have anything bad to say about anybody, but I don't know if anybody would want me to say anything. So I just won't. Everybody I've worked with has been genuinely very easy to work with, which I don't hear that much. I talk to a lot of people who were like constantly having nightmare experiences, and I haven't really.
I wonder, here's the thing. I have had one nightmare experience with, I asked Naomi what I was allowed to say.
Full names.
With I'll just say a network that here's where this stuff gets like insane. I wrote them a 1-page idea. I had met this woman. She was like a former UCB person, and so she like I had a general meeting with her, and then later on, a couple like months later, Naomi and I had this idea for a show, and I just sent her like 1 page that kind of just outlined the idea, and she's like, "Yeah, this is great. Let's do it." And I go, "Oh, okay." I mean, I didn't say it like that, but I'm like, "Oh, that's great." It was a little weird. As now that we've done this for a while, it's like usually at the very beginning, you hand in a document that's like 8 to 9 pages roughly, somewhere in that ballpark, that kind of just like outlines the idea and gives it a little bit of depth. So you have like some roadmap as to where it's going. But off of this 1 page, eventually like they bought it, again, not a lot of money, but enough to say like, yeah, we're interested in doing this. And by the time we got to like making a pilot, we had this kickoff call. And they, in the call, they were like, by the way, we were thinking of doing a millennial 60 Minutes. Is there any way this idea could be that?
Which I assume it was nothing like a millennial 60 Minutes?
Yeah, not anything like that or anywhere near it.
We want to combine the oldest people in the world with the youngest people in the world. Can we do it?
And that should have, again, we were kind of green. This was years and years ago. And it should have signaled to us that maybe this was not going to work out.
Yeah.
And it ended with Naomi crying and me having chest pains because it was so difficult to work. I don't want to get too much into details, but like literally like that, when I started to get chest pains, Naomi got an ulcer and was at some point was reduced to crying in one of the executives' offices explaining like why this is not working. That was like So
that one is a nightmare.
Yeah. And again, off of a page of information, that should not, like, now that I've been doing this kind of for real for a little while, you can see why maybe that was, because anyone can apparently, like, if you're famous enough, you can just walk in with like a sentence and they're like, yeah, do it, and then it probably turns out shitty because no one had any kind of idea of what no one was on the same page when they bought it.
Yeah. That is, I think, most often how it happens is that somebody walks in with a celebrity. Maybe somebody has half an idea. Like, it truly seems like, and I'm sure this isn't true of everybody, but just from what I understand and have experienced myself, if you're very successful and famous, the shows you pitch are nonsense. You come in and you're just like, I got this other famous bud of mine and we want to like screw around on TV. And they're like, that sounds amazing. Here's $12 million.
Dressed like gargoyles.
Yeah.
But we're not gargoyles. We just wear gargoyle costumes. But no one ever comments on it.
No one comments on it, but we don't move. We don't move or speak, but the camera sits on us for 30 minutes once a week for 2 years. And they're like, here's all the money we can find. I just cleaned out my bank account.
I sold my car. I sold my wife into, I was gonna say white slavery. And then I'm like, maybe that's not where this joke should go.
It's fine. We all love white slavery.
Oh boy. So yes, you were saying.
It does feel like there are different levels of work that go into all of it. Like having written a pilot in advance and then a production company or / studio saw it and they optioned it. So I got paid a little bit because they liked the script and were like, we want to work with you on this. And here's like kind of a show of good faith. We're paying you a little bit. And then we ended up pitching that. That was one. They do this thing that everybody in the industry calls packaging, which is, I think, something that CAA started doing in the 80s. And it
might be on its way out because I think WGA or SAG or one of them is like, hey, this is not good.
It's particularly bad because now a lot of the agencies have like in-house production companies and studios and stuff. So now they're just like only setting themselves up to always make their own thing. So it's making it a monopoly.
Yeah. So it's going back to basically
the studio system of the 50s. Yeah. So with this place, they optioned it and then we pitched it around. And with the packaging, they paired me with an executive producer who had a lot of experience doing satire, and so it made it look better. The show was about it was a satire of BuzzFeed type places, but more of a satire of the personalities that work there than like just content jokes. And so they also paired me with a BuzzFeed person, I'll just say his name because he's great. A really funny guy named Matt Belisai came on and was like, kind of there to lend legitimacy to it, to be like, I've worked there. Like he was like one of the original BuzzFeed people who like got famous from it or whatever. And so he came on board to kind of be like, this experience mirrors my experience. It feels real. And then we had like higher up executive producers who have done a lot of stuff. And so all of that was basically meant to be like, look, this show is undeniable. You have to buy it. And then no one bought it. So it really doesn't matter. Like even that stuff, I will say, compared to the other show I was talking about, when I pitched that one, people were like, I can't believe this didn't sell. And then with the first show, no one said that. People were just like, hey, yeah, you gave it your best shot. I mean,
this is the thing that I've learned, and again, this is a very short time that I've been out here, but whatever happens when you're pitching it has almost unless you're pitching it to the person that is the top person at that network and can just say in the room yes or no. There's almost no connection between whatever happens in that room and whether they buy it or not.
Yeah.
Because Naomi and I, when the show that we sold, when we went and pitched it, we went to 14 places. We didn't necessarily want to. Like, it was like, it's a single cam sitcom that's, how much can I say? It's a single cam sitcom.
You've already said too much. Single cam?
But it's like a cable. It's supposed to be a cable show.
Okay.
And the CBS was like, well, we should go to all the broadcast networks, Fox and NBC and ABC and CBS. They were very nice, and I think it could have worked if one of them had bought it, but it wasn't necessarily like the way we described it was not like something you would see on a broadcast network.
Yeah.
And we went to like way too many places. And like when we were at CBS, they seemed to really like it. Like, and we really connected with them and we made them laugh in the room and then they passed on it. So there was no connection between those things.
There's so many people that have to approve it after you walk out of the room. Also, do you know Gabe Delahaye?
Yeah.
I'm working with him on a show right now, and we were joking about this morning, is that you have to pitch to people between 10:45 a.m. and 11:15 a.m. And if you pitch at any other time, you will lose, because either after 11:15 they're just thinking about lunch, and after lunch they're just like, I wish there was another lunch. Like, it's you're pitching to people who are, their day is like defined by like how busy they are before and after lunch. And so you really have to like hit them at like the right moment. And this, honestly, I'm not saying that this is their fault. Like their job is extremely busy and they're just like tired and they're hearing a million ideas. So you have to hit them at the exact moment that they are feeling it. And if you don't, then they'll pass on it. Yeah. And even if your pitch is great, like you could make them laugh in the room. And if they're just like, well, that was a good pitch. Now I have 9 meetings I have to go to. And I will have totally forgotten what that pitch was when those 9 meetings are over, because I'm going to be so beat. Like, there's so many extra factors just in that small step. They also have to then take your idea and pitch it to their boss.
Yes.
Like, if they love your pitch, they then have to kind of repeat it to a different person who gives them the money to say yes, which seems impossible. I'm like, how does anybody do it?
Yeah. And if they're not up to the task of doing it the way you did it, then who knows what they say? Who knows what information that they give to their bosses or their bosses' bosses? So you don't know like what you've said and the way you said it, if that ever gets transmitted exactly or not. And that's probably what happens too. Why people pass on these things.
Yeah.
So development can happen in a number of ways. Basically, like you can go into a general meeting, which is just like a get to know you kind of meeting with a production company usually. And usually at the end of them, they're like, so you got any ideas or something like that? And you just kind of like pitch a couple, you don't get too like selly with it. Like you just kind of casually pitch some ideas you might have. And maybe if they like one of them, they're like, oh, I'd love to see a document on that.
Yep. Like, let's talk more about it. Send me something that I can look at.
Yeah. So you send them some stuff and then they go and then they say yes or no. Like, there's one thing that I'm working on now. Again, it's so difficult to like navigate like what I can or can't say. There's a thing I'm developing now for a stand-up who I'm friends with. It's not Naomi, so I can.
Okay.
So
I know who it is. I'll say.
Say it.
I'm just kidding.
Just bleep it out.
If I say it, then it makes it okay.
But with a production company, and we wrote. I wrote my friend, and I said, "Hey, would you like to?" I kind of had this. I had you in mind. Would you be interested in this? And they were like, "Yes." And then we took it to the production company, and they were like, "Oh, yes, let's do that. You should write a script. It'll make it easier to sell it." And then they're trying to get a famous director on board because they're like, that will make it easier to say. Again, kind of like your thing. And then who knows whether the fuck anyone will want to buy it or not. Right.
It's still a dice roll, and it's also even beyond the joke thing I said about lunch. It's also so much like, do they even want a show that's like yours? Like, they might actually be able to see exactly why it would be hilarious and perfect. And then they're like, but where does it fit? We have 12 other shows on the air right now. What does this go with? Yeah. Oh, nothing. So then why bother making it? Like, there's so many things they have to consider that are completely out of your hands. So basically all you can do is just go in and give it the best version of what you think it should be as you can. Like, if you go into I do think trying to adjust your pitch for different networks, you shouldn't do it much. Maybe a little bit if like you're going in to a network, like a broadcast network, and you're pitching something super vulgar, like tone that down. But I just think you should just pitch the show. Just pitch whatever the best version of the show is that you think the best version is. And then either they buy it or they don't. Because if you try to aim it too hard at any given place, they've got too many other things to consider for them to even care if you got it right for them. Is my thought.
Yeah, no, it's right. I think some people, again, either people come in with ideas that are just like super vague, and then there's someone famous around that's either attached to it or that is doing the pitching, and so they just get bought and then it gets turned into a direct. Or what was the other one I was thinking of that you just said?
I don't know. I was talking about.
Oh, or someone will be so thirsty that they will like try to make something that's like super zeitgeisty.
Oh, yeah.
Or super like you can, if you've been doing this for a while, you can kind of feel what's in the air and then like maybe write something that's based on like what you can feel or what you can feel. Usually I like try to think about like, well, what's next so that I can kind of, if I really need to make something, if I need to write an idea that's like, it's not necessarily like a passion of mine, but I'm kind of like trying to read like culture in a way, and I'm trying to think like, well, what might be popular in a year or two. You can't really do it, but you can kind of like,
You can kind of think, what am I tired of?
Yeah.
And then can I do something that's the opposite of that?
Yeah.
Like my current one is like, I just don't want to pitch any more dark comedies. Like anything that's like about a sad person navigating life. I'm like, I hate those. I'm tired of them. I think the world is tired of them or is getting there.
Yeah.
And that pretty soon people are like, please give me like a joke driven, funny, bright, like Kimmy Schmidt or something. Like, I think that's more what people are going to be into instead of like Transparent or Louis or any of those things that were popular in the past like 10 years. So like, yeah, but I don't know how to take advantage of that thought. The only thing I can do is just try to write a comedy that I think is light and funny.
Well, what if it was a former stand-up who jerked off in front of a lot of people,
And then he
but
goes
went
to hell.
to jail? Yeah, and then comes back and has to repent.
Yeah, but he's a full demon now and he refuses to repent.
So there's a bunch of demons that are forcing him to repent.
Yeah, they're like, you've got to get over this. And he's like, no, I think the Parkland kids are stupid.
Yeah. So the pandery people. And usually that stuff doesn't really work out well either. But then again, or it gets made and it's shitty.
Yeah, it's a real, I mean, the other thing is everybody's trying so hard to get an idea sold and made and considered that you just like, I was even thinking about this recently. The last three things that I pitched, I felt passionate about on some level. Like the first thing I pitched was set in the South and was like kind of an analysis of a lot of things that I feel about being from there and like people that I know from there and stuff like that. So I felt close to home. The second thing I pitched was about working at BuzzFeed type place. I used to work at Super Deluxe and I had like a lot of experiences that felt really useful for a comedy about that kind of place. And then the third thing I pitched, the thing that I was talking about getting just passed on yesterday, was a show about a family dealing with a family member who has Alzheimer's, which is close to home because currently my grandfather has, I don't think it's actually Alzheimer's, but it's very advanced dementia and it presents the same way.
Yeah.
And so it's like all those things I was like, wow, those are like things that are going on in my life that I feel like I have something to say about. And today I was like, do I have anything left to say? Like all the three shows that felt really important got passed on. How do people keep having something to say for their entire career? And I think most people don't. Like you reach a point where you just don't have anything to say anymore.
Well, that's like Woody Allen, another great director, Woody Allen, who
another demon, another resurrected hell demon.
Yeah, wait. So what about all these awful monsters? I mean, like moral monsters, ethical monsters. They go to hell, and then they're sent. Like God makes them come back to repent
and ask for forgiveness,
and they refuse to do it.
They refuse. They have no idea how.
There's a bunch of demons and angels that are forcing him. So it's not just Louis; it's also Woody Allen and Harvey Weinstein and Roman Polanski and all these people. So it's like a suicide squad, an ethical suicide squad, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that is a perfect idea that we really need. I'm hoping that every man that we cast is white and that we just really get it out there because it's about time.
Les Moonves is one of the characters too.
He produces it also. He's attached.
Wait, are we saying that they're hold on, are they supposed to be doing good or are they coming back to do more evil?
I think the premise is that they're supposed to be doing good, but they are refusing against the show's will.
So God and the devil are trying to get
They're
them.
like, guys,
They're-
this sucks. Clean up your act.
Even the devil is like, this too far for me.
Yeah, he's like, look, I clean out people's assholes every day to torture them, and I'm tired of this.
So wait, so the devil is now administering enemas so that he
Yeah.
can then torture them?
Yeah, because he doesn't want his hands dirty.
I was gonna say that sounds like his thing. That sounds like it's his fetish that he's dealing with in hell.
There's a lot going on in this show. None of it good.
So wait.
And that is the show I pitched.
Why did I even fucking bring up Woody Allen?
I don't know. You were going to say something about geniuses.
So anyway,
Something, your hero.
God damn you. So wait, the development process can take on a couple different forms. You have an idea in a meeting with someone. I've never done this, but you said you did this. You had an idea, you wrote it up, and then you sent it out to a company, or you...
The pilot?
Yeah.
That was a pilot that I just wrote because I just wanted to. It wasn't anything that I wrote with any purpose. I just wrote it, and I also didn't even have reps at that point. That was just like, oh, I want to write this to try to get a job or something. And it worked for whatever reason. And so then once it was kind of out there, people started, it's like my agents that I got started sending it around, and people started reading it and being like, oh, this could be a real show. And then it kind of went from there. So it was, yeah, I didn't write it first with the intent of doing anything with it. I just wrote it because I wanted to.
Yeah. And then the third one, if I can say this, I can cut it out if you don't want it, but your manager paired you with another stand-up, or with a stand-up.
Yeah.
Who kind of had an idea, and then you guys developed it together.
Yeah. I feel like I can probably say certain things about it. It's not like, I don't think the project's done, so I can't just like fully say everything, but I can say like, yes, my manager, basically what it was I asked my manager if she had any clients or knew anybody that might want to like team up, because I'd been doing so much stuff on my own that I was kind of going a little insane, and I wanted to find somebody to work with that she felt like might be a good fit. So she set me up on a few different meetings with her clients, and then this one was a stand-up named Megan Gailey, who when we met up, we started talking about just like our lives and where we were from, and we both ended up talking about Alzheimer's, and the first time we ever met. And as we were talking about it, I started saying like, it really feels like a lot of the stuff that's happened between my family and my grandfather, and like her family and her grandmother, there's a lot here. Like, we should write something up. This was in the middle of me pitching a bunch of other stuff. And so it was really just like, yeah, I don't know, why not? Let's give it a shot. And then the thing that's really funny is all those other things that I was pitching, some of which I've already talked about, ended up being very frustrating, because it was like there was a lot of work put into the pitch, just like hours and hours and hours and days crafting it, perfecting it, writing Bibles, practicing it, just like pouring like my entire life into trying to pitch those shows. And then this thing with Megan was like, yeah, this is a nice bonus thing. I like her. We like working together. Let's see what happens. And we actually, to be 100% honest, had not had a chance to practice the pitch at all before we wrote it and we knew the show. We wrote up a pitch document, but we hadn't had a chance to practice it together until the day we had to go pitch it. So the first thing we did was we pitched it to production companies, and we took it around and we pitched it to like 5 production companies. And as we were pitching it, actually, I take that back. We had practiced once for our managers, but that was also something we had not had time to practice for. So every time that we did the pitch, it was just cold. And then we would just try to play off of each other and make things funny in the moment. And it felt so loose, and we weren't just like stuck on it being a perfect idea that we nailed. I think it just made us like kind of naturally find rhythms together. And the pitches went better than anything I've ever done. And it was crazy. I was like, why is this crushing when like these other things that I prepare for months, like I go in and sometimes people just stare at me blank faced like I'm an idiot.
Because Megan's a stand-up. And it's the same thing, I think, when Naomi and I went, Naomi is a stand-up and she knows how to perform. And then you or I can just kind of like jump in there. We know how to perform too, but we're not that. We're not, we're not in your face.
Yeah.
So
We're muted.
so it's I think you find a rhythm with that person if they're also a performer.
Yeah. I think that's what it was. And we played off of each other well, like certain things that we had like really locked in our brains about the show, the other hadn't. So we could pick up the slack whenever we hit something. And those production company meetings went really well. You don't sign with them or anything, but we just like agreed to take it out with a production company.
That's so weird to me.
You never sign. I mean, you sign something when you sell it, but you don't sign anything else ever. In my experience, I had to sign like one kind of weird document for the first show that I took out. That was basically an agreement that if the show got picked up, the supervising producer I was working with would be part of it. And I was like, okay. I mean, like, you will be. Like, I'm not going to stop you. But he just wanted that assurance.
I get that because I've seen, if I had to do it over again, we would have fired the first thing that was a disaster years and years ago. We would have fired our supervising producers if I had before it went to pilot.
Oh, because you didn't like how they...
We made a concept tape. And it was very obvious that we picked them. You know, we interviewed a bunch of people after we sold it, quote unquote, sold it to the place. Again, very vague.
The place.
We
got it.
Interviewed a bunch of producers, and these were the ones that, like, they came in. You know, a lot of times, especially if it's Naomi and I working on something together, if they come in and they only address Naomi, then we know not to work with them. Because we know that they're just like interested in her because she worked on Broad City or was on Two Dope Queens or whatever it is. And that I'm just going to be an afterthought, even though her and I are full partners.
Right.
And
that's a good metric.
It is. And these were the only people that came in. They had not only knew who I was and like researched me, but they had listened to a bunch of episodes of Beginnings and they had some thoughts on things and stuff like that. And that was like, oh, we'll work with you guys are great. And you also have like a good pedigree for what we were doing and have smart ideas. But then when we made a concept tape, which was just like a mini pilot basically. And
like a sizzle reel.
Yeah, but it was like a full, like an episode.
Like an episode.
Like it was an actual, like, this is what it would look like. This is what it would, you know, on this little amount of money you're giving us for production, this is what it would be like.
Okay.
And while we were editing it, they started to get really tight. And instead of like making a thing that being like, well, the idea that Nam and I always wanted to do was that we'll make our idea. And if they like it, then great. But if they don't like it, okay, no problem. And the producers wanted to get it made.
Yeah.
And we're tailoring it so that it would get made as opposed to what we wanted.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, it's not like if we had wanted like crazy shit, but like I would be like, yeah, of course. If I had asked for like a psychedelic scene and like a bunch of surreal, like Boonwell type, you know, imagery. Yeah, and yes.
Constant griffins in the background.
Yeah, like 8-bit characters, 8-bit griffins in the background with 8-bit music that have nothing to do with what the concept was.
Right.
But I felt like it would be visually appealing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be great. So I see why they
it wasn't
didn't want that.
So it wasn't anything crazy like that. It was like minor things where I'm like, I think we should edit it like this so that it has some kind of flair, so that it's not just like this flat shot, reverse shot type stuff, but that, you know, if it's done like, you know, things like that. And they're like, well, no, I don't think they'll buy that. I mean, literally, you know,
they won't buy it. Like,
they won't take this to pilot.
It.
Yeah, they won't take this. I mean, they purchased it already, but they won't take it to pilot.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, okay, well then they don't take it to pilot. I don't want to make a shitty show. I don't want to make something shitty.
Yeah.
If they're, you know, and again, the money it wasn't like such a crazy amount of money that I would totally subvert my beliefs,
instincts and beliefs
and aesthetic principles.
Yeah.
It was like a little bit. So might as well make the thing I want to make anyway.
Yeah.
But I should have, but that should have been the clue to me that they were going to be very difficult going forward and would eventually ruin the thing. So
So you understand why someone might ask for a contract.
I could 100% understand why someone then would ask to not to have you sign something that says, please don't fire me
Yeah.
if this gets sold.
I mean, I was perfectly happy to do it. It was just kind of that was the only thing that I had signed with anybody. And I was like, oh, it's weird that I have to sign anything here, but that's fine. But yeah, so with the ABC thing, that's who it's with. That doesn't matter. They announced it in Deadline, so I guess I can say anything that was in there. But once we took it to the production company, it was specifically this one producer. She helped us with the pitch a little bit. Like by the time that we had like pitched it to her, we'd pitched it to like 4 other people, and we really had the rhythm down, even though we'd never practiced it. So she gave us a few notes. We pitched it to her again. She liked it. We took it to the ABC studio because she had an exclusive deal with ABC. So she had to pitch to ABC and nobody else. So the danger was if we pitched it to ABC studio and then they didn't like it, we'd have to find a whole new producer because she can only work with the ABC studios. So we pitched it to ABC studios and then they liked it and they agreed to partner with us on it, which was, like a breath of fresh air because it meant, great, we've got everything that we can get that we absolutely need. Then traditionally what you do once you have your studio on board is you go and pitch it to like if you're pitching a broadcast show, you pitch it to every broadcast network. So ABC, NBC, Fox, and CBS, and maybe the CW, depending on what it is. And so we were prepared to do that, but basically the studio recommended that we just pitch it to ABC network first because we would have to anyway because that's who they're aligned with, and basically see how that goes. And then we went and pitched it to ABC network, and they essentially bought it in the room. We pitched it to them. They, I believe, literally said, well, give us a few minutes to think about it and we'll be in touch. And Megan and I were walking out with our producer and I went, did they say minutes? And she was like, they mean days. I don't know why they said minutes. They were just being, I don't know, maybe it was a slip of the tongue or something. And then we went in the elevator, and before we got to our car, they called us and said, we want it. So we didn't have to pitch it anywhere else because we also always kind of thought it was best for them anyway, based on the subject matter and the tone we were going for. So we were happy to have that happen. And so then we just didn't pitch to anybody else. We just immediately started writing it. And then the studio, basically you do all these different steps. For a broadcast show, it's very structured, which I like. I like having like hard deadlines and knowing exactly what I need to be doing at all times. And their cycle is so like tight. They have the same exact cycle every year. And so it's very predictable and you know what you're getting into. So we had to first write what they call a story area, which is where you just write kind of like a page that says what you think the story, the A story, the B story, and if there's a C story of the pilot will be. So you just say, here's what we think it'll be. And then that goes to your producer. She approves it. Then it goes to the studio. They approve it. Then it goes to the network and they approve it. And that's how everything works always. So then after that, you do the outline. Once the outline's approved by all 3 steps, then you move on to your first draft. And then that's approved by all 3 steps. And then you do, I think, 3 revisions and a polish is what was in our contract. So basically you just keep rewriting until you get it to where they feel happy with it. And then they pass the final product on to the president of the network. She reads it, and then they make their decision based on a million other factors that have nothing to do with you, which I feel confident about. Like I don't think that I did a bad job, and I think they know that. And I had a good time. Every person that I worked with throughout that process was genuinely helpful, wanted the show to be good. They knew that it was a show about Alzheimer's and didn't try to change that or try to mute it or do anything to make it to like avoid that or lean into it too hard and make it weird. Like everybody trusted us to get the tone right and then gave us notes on what they thought we were going for.
Could it be gonorrhea instead?
Yeah, we did not get that. So we made the best show that we thought we could make. And then for whatever myriad reasons are out there, they passed on it in the end. But now we get the script back with the studio. And so we in the studio can take it somewhere else eventually.
Oh yeah. That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the goal.
I mean, the network the broadcast network cycle is pretty, what is it that you have to have the pilot written by the end of December or something like that? What is the exact?
I think it's something like that. We had ours done early. We were even told at one point that we were the first people who were done. And mostly just because we were just like excited to be working on it. So we just got it done in a hurry. But I think from what I know from other people who were developing at other networks this year, some people turn their stuff in like halfway through January. It depends on kind of who you are and what you're doing. And like, if you're a big name, you can turn it in like towards the end of January and still have a chance of getting picked up. We wanted to be out front because we don't have big deals anywhere and we're not famous. So, we turned ours in, I think like December 1st. And then our final draft, that was the final draft we turned in, and then we just didn't do anything else. Until we like basically mid-January is when they started talking about who was going to get picked up. And that's when I like got on the edge of my seat and was constantly just like, it was funny. It made me kind of remember what it felt like when Mod Night was happening at UCB, which is such a like silly comparison sort of to think that it felt the same, but it did. It was like, I remember like turning in mod packets at UCB and being like, am I ever going to get this? And just like sitting on the edge of your seat, and then the call doesn't come and the call doesn't come. And like, other people are getting asked, and people are posting about it on Facebook, and you're like, is it going to be me? And then it isn't, or then the year it is, whatever. But it felt the same except like on this big scale where I could just go to Deadline and just like refresh their page that says ABC pilot pickups.
Oh God.
And just like see it go from 0 to 2 to 4. And I'm like, okay, well, they might pick up like 8. So I've still got a chance here. And then like, I think we may have been, if not the last people they passed on, we were close. So I at least feel good that we got way far deep in the process before they finally passed on it. But it was still just like nerve-wracking to be like, are they going to call me? Like, do I get to play the game? But
I mean, I can't even imagine that anxiety, because like I purposely don't read Deadline. I probably should. Both my agent and Naomi have said you should probably pay attention to what's going on, but
I don't know.
So much anxiety that I can't, because I also like I get so anxious for what if someone is making an idea that I've had. Or what if someone this also like really gets me, if someone is like that I think Naomi should be in this thing, and then it turns out to be someone else, and I'm like, that should have been Naomi.
Yeah.
And then that causes me anxiety and I get angry. And so I try to avoid, I can't imagine that level of.
I think since you are in a relationship with an actor, like that's different. I don't have that problem, because like, you're worried about that, and like so much of Deadline is announcing casting, and it's always like, I'm sure there's a lot of things she's up for, and then it's like, then you get that announcement. Like for me, there's like not much that I have to worry about. So I totally understand why you aren't reading Deadline.
Did you get angry if someone has an idea that's like similar to something you had, and you're like, well, I guess that's dead?
I have had that thought. In the middle of me developing this show, the show is currently called, and I guess it will always be this, I don't know. It's called Everything's Under Control.
I like that.
And there was a pilot that got picked up by Freeform called Everything's Gonna Be All Right. And the mere fact that it had everything's in the title made me go, what is this? And then I clicked on it, and it's on Freeform, so it's automatically for a younger audience than us, no matter what. But I still read the premise, and it was about like, a kid moves back in with his parents or with his father to help take care of his sisters, who either his father or his sisters have some sort of disability. And I was like, oh my God, because our show is about somebody moving back in to help take care of a woman who has Alzheimer's. So it's like
Josh, what's his name?
I'd never heard of anybody involved, but
it might be the thing. One of my favorite shows is Please Like Me. And I think the actor, he's Australian. I think his name's Josh something. I forget now.
Okay.
But that might be his.
It could be. I don't remember details.
Because it was strikingly similar to some idea Naomi had. And that's why I'm like, it's sticking in my head because I'm like, huh. I thought for a second you were going to say it was a kid who had Alzheimer's. like what a weird freeform. I mean, I guess that it is skewed to kids, but like that seems a little too much.
That's rough. Yeah, that would be a tough show.
He's got progeria and Alzheimer's. Jesus Christ.
Wow, this is a real super jack.
Ooh,
Yeah.
love it.
But just seeing that was the one. That was in the middle of us writing this. It was before we had even turned in our final draft, but I just remember being like, oh no, like, is that just the mere fact that this exists on a totally different channel that would never overlap with us? Does that kill us? And I don't think it had any effect, but it just like, you are looking at that. I remember when I was pitching my show about Super Deluxe BuzzFeed stuff, somebody I know was in Deadline, like a person who's maybe not a friend, but close, for selling a show that was about that. Like it popped up and it was about a person who had written a show about two people who were like YouTube stars because of something they did at some company. And I was like, oh no, like now I'm never going to sell mine because this exists. It's like, there's gotta be 100 pilots out there right now about BuzzFeed, like that. It can't be that original. So it's not really a factor, I think, half the time.
That's why you have to go. We'll go back to the beginning of what we were talking about. That's why you have to make it the most insane, iconoclastic idea in the world.
Yes. That's why you got to put 8-bit griffins in there.
And then pile on even more nonsense on top of that so that it's so unique that no one can deny it.
Yeah. Like how you always like it when somebody makes you food that has every ingredient they can find in it. You're always like, this tastes great. I love how I can taste everything that God ever made.
Yeah. I said 7-layer dip. I didn't say what was in that dip. It's marshmallows. It is queso. It is
just straight up grass.
I was going to say rocks. I went, yeah. Good. We were heightening in the same area.
7-layer dip.
Well, Aaron, thanks so much for coming over, celebrating 9 years of beginnings.
Yeah.
And
congratulations. It's really wild.
Thanks. I mean, literally, it just requires me to keep going. So,
I mean, that's
not so in both the sense of not dying and also just continuing to do the show.
Well, it's harder to have a 400th episode than it is to have a birthday. So I think you're.
Oh God!
I think you're exceeding what you seem to think is just a natural thing happening. I think you're doing great.
Well, thanks. I think you're doing great too.
Well, are we good? Mark?
You know what? Let's lock the gates and find out.
Okay.
I said on the last episode, there was I was talking to a woman who's she's like she became a pop hit in the UK in her teen. She's from Ireland in her teens, and we were talking about just like what a mind fuck it is to figure out who you are as a person at the same time you are figuring out who you are as an artist, and you're in this pressure cooker of being in the public eye at the same time.
Yeah.
And I was just like, man, you're doing that. And you're like, what the fuck? And I'm like, what are you saying? What? You are. There's no way you can hear someone say that phrase on a podcast and not think of Mark Maron. And I said it in a kind of gruff voice.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And it was just, it struck me as just like, why, like that you are. It just sounded like such a Mark Maron moment that it like took me completely out of talking.
You just like fell face down on the ground and you couldn't continue.
Yeah, I fell on the ground and all these nicotine lozenges fell out of my mouth that hadn't been in there. I hadn't put them in there.
And then here comes Boomer. I listen to a podcast. I can make references to one podcast.
Freedom.
Okay. Yeah. I know what that is.
What's up, hot dog? Anyway, thanks, Aaron.
Yeah. Anytime.
And we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye, oh, bye.